Hello everyone, goedemorgen, bonjour, and welcome to the sixth stop of the BUS2BUS Digital Roadshow in the Benelux. My name is Laura de Korenbeiter and I am the representative of BUS2BUS and Messe Berlin in Belgium and Luxembourg. I work for the Belgian-Luxembourg German Chamber of Commerce located in Brussels. My colleague, Jana, who represents the Netherlands and works for the German-Dutch Chamber of Commerce in Den Haag, is also here with us today. We are both very excited to see all of you here and to delve into the realm of fresh bus travel in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg with all of you and with our mobility experts here today. So welcome, and we wish you all a good roadshow. Before we start the panel discussion, Kerstin from BUS2BUS will say a few words about BUS2BUS. So first, I want to give the floor to Kerstin.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. A warm welcome from my side too. Thanks to Jana and Laura to do the introduction. Welcome to another exciting edition of our BUS2BUS Digital Roadshow. I'm just going to start with saying a few things about BUS2BUS, and for those who are not familiar with our event yet. Our event premiered in 2017, and it has been a pleasure to watch evolve and grow and gain popularity over the past years. BUS2BUS is a mobility trade show and business platform for the German and European bus industry. And next year, it will take place for the fourth time at the end of April in Berlin. It attracts a broad range of international exhibitors and visitors from urban and public transport, the private bus sector, and bus tourism, and of course, long-distance transport as well, while focusing on future technologies and sustainable solutions. We invite you all to come and visit us next year in Berlin, one of Germany's most exciting cities. If you want to get involved as a partner, please get in touch with us. Exhibitor registration is still open, and our ticket shop will so as well very soon. With all that being said, it would be let's start the discussion, and I would like to introduce to our moderator today. Welcome, Franz Tellemer. He is a professor in intelligent transport mobility at HRN University of Applied Science in Arnhem, the Netherlands. His research focuses on digitalization and automation of road transport, both logistics and passenger transport. In addition to technical aspects of automation, he also focuses on social acceptance and the same technology. He also brings his expertise in the mobility industry, as he has worked in several companies and organizations. Franz, welcome. And I'm going to give you the floor very soon, but just one question to get it started. Why is the mobility sector so fascinating for you?
Well, thank you, Kirsten, and thank you for having me. It's a great delight. Well, the mobility sector, I think, looking at energy, looking at the transition that we're going through, mobility is maybe the most important part to meet each other, to travel, to go to work. So without traveling, without mobility, we don't have the ability to change the world into this CO2 neutral environment. So it is, I think, at the basis, at the heart of the transition that we're facing.
Thank you so much, Franz. And the floor is yours. And I'm really looking forward for an interesting discussion. Hello to everybody again.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. Thank you. Up to me to guide you through this 1.5 hour of interesting show today. We go deeper into fresh travel. And what is fresh travel, dear audience, dear panelists? That is a difficult question to me. I have discussed this at home, and well, we came to the conclusion that we should make analogies towards box fresh sneakers. And you all know the thrill that you have when you order this white and blue box or this dark orange box, and you open it up and you have the feeling of this luxurious piece of art which is in the box. And I think this is what fresh travel also in a bus should mean to us. Opening the doors of the bus, getting into the bus, seated in this luxurious feeling, and then more importantly, looking at the bus, not having to deal with this steering wheel being driven around. So hopefully this will set the agenda for today. set the agenda for fresh travel, but not before I introduce to you our new panel, starting with Chris Beghin. Chris, welcome. A warm welcome. Normally, in a regular audience, I would have asked to applaud for you. Not today. Chris, you started your career in public transport in 2001 at the municipal transport company in Amsterdam, GVB. And after this, you took on miscellaneous Dutch and international assignments as a consultant. So very experienced. Approximately 10 years ago, you started at the Dutch Keolis subsidiary, and your current title is Strategic Advisor Benelux. A warm welcome to you. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Menno, coming to you. Menno van der Zee is one of the founders of the routing company. At the TU Delft, Menno researched the application of mathematical optimization to mobility problems. We have something in common here, Menno. In collaboration with MIT researchers, the routing company was founded to build technology to power more flexible, efficient, and convenient public transportation. The routing company is best known for its innovative demand bus technology, which allows public buses to drive highly efficient, dynamic routes that continuously adapt to real-time demand. That's a whole of a lot of a challenge, Menno. Good to have you here, and hopefully we will hear a lot about this challenge today.
Thank you, I definitely will.
Coming to you, Lukas Wilde. Nice to have you also here. Lukas Wilde is a business development manager for the DACH region, which stands for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and has been with Heliox for 3 years, supporting the company on their mission to provide a seamless charging experience for every electric vehicle. And for those who drive an electric vehicle, we all know how important this seamless experience is. While he primarily focuses on the collaboration with customers and OEMs in the DACH region, Lukas also collaborates with organizations in the Benelux region to electrify e-buses, e-trucks, and heavy-duty vehicle fleets. Heliox is headquartered in the Netherlands and has a local presence everywhere in the world: Germany, United Kingdom, France, Scandinavia, and the United States. So a lot of traveling also for you, Lukas, I guess, not by bus to the United States, I hope.
That would be difficult, yeah.
Good to have you here. And Patrick, last but not least, Patrick Oosterveld from Ebusco. Good to have you here with a nice red bus in the background. Patrick Oosterveld is a professional with a wealth of experience in the bus sector. With a career spanning numerous years, Patrick has gathered his expertise and deep understanding of the bus transportation field in the role of sales director at Ebusco. He continuously tries to shape the future of sustainable, innovative public transportation solutions. Also, a warm welcome to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Okay, dear panel, let's go to the moment of truth. We go deeper into what fresh travel means and how do we see the future of the bus. I've seen rapid developments in the past years. Both environment and climate ask for CO2 neutral fuels or electric drivetrains with batteries. And look what progress has been made, not only by you four panelists, but in the whole field, I guess. Electric drivetrains, hydrogen drivetrains, carbon neutral fuels, adapting infrastructures with high power charging. And I recently heard that bus companies become electricity providers because they have so much space on their bus depots to install solar panels. Very intriguing. And luckily also we have some public policies that strengthen our vision on public transport and electrifying it. The obligation to CO2 neutral, emission-free public transport in our cities, but also on the long haul. Yet undeniably, there are some challenges ahead. Geopolitics around scarce materials, strong competition in the industry, competing industries, and of course also the post-COVID passenger demands. So that is a whole lot of interesting developments coming here. Patrick, I want to start with you. Again, a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Looking at the developments in drivetrains, how is Ebusco positioning itself regarding these new drivetrains? And what are the strategies when you look at battery electric or maybe even hydrogen electric technologies?
Well, Ebusco is a little bit different from the others because we don't have a heritage. We don't have a heritage of diesel or gas vehicles. So what we designed is pure electric. So the whole chassis, the whole weight deviation on the chassis is done by a designer who's only need to take into account electric. It's not a way that we take out the chassis, we put out the diesel engine and put in batteries, because then you have a default in your chassis weight balancing. So, but therefore we are young, we are about 10 years old now, but therefore we have it more light because we don't have heritage where we need to scope with. I believe in battery buses. We believe in battery buses which are charged overnight. I don't think that hydrogen will have a vote in the city bus operation. Perhaps in the future it will be for range extenders or long tours. So let's say international roads for coaches or for trucks. But for buses, regional buses, I think this will be it. The key for us is weight reduction. The more weight we reduce on our vehicle, the more batteries or the more passengers you can take. So that's up to the operator. Do I need a long range or do I need a lot of passengers? Is it the city operation? Is it the intercity operation? And with our new chassis, where our Ebusco 3.0, we have find this key to let the customer decide, can I have let's say a 250 kilowatt of battery, or do I need a 500 kilowatt battery? Do I need 80 passengers or do I need 120 passengers? So that's a little bit our philosophy on the drivetrains and everything what comes together with it.
Thank you so much. You are talking about flexibility. You are talking about not having this heritage, maybe even turn the word around and say legacy of the diesel, the heavy diesel engines polluting our cities. You were talking about the customer as the mobility provider, the Keolis of this world, so to say. But when you look at the customer as the passenger in the bus, and also again going back to this term like fresh travel, how do your products, Ebusco's buses, contribute to this concept of fresh travel? And also, how do your buses make bus travel more attractive?
Well, your question is actually half a year too early for us. We are working on a show bus. This show bus is a cooperation of the OEM and of an operator, and also on the PTA. We had some little announcement last week on the Red Cabin event in Vienna, but we will have this vehicle for sure this summer. Will be ready, and that is a little bit on how we see the future in the bus, the show bus project, where you have young people traveling, so families. You have business people traveling, so they want to have more quiet space. They want to have a more closed environment, so they can have a call. And you have this urban guys, this young professionals, which are not really sitting in the bus. They're really more hanging, because in the city bus they hop on, they hop off, and the average duration we made in the survey is between 5 and 7 minutes. So they don't have the need to sit down. They just hang around. What they need is a plug-in for the telephone so that they can charge. And all this is combined in this 12-meter vehicle, which will be announced this summer, which we are really hard working on. And I'm sure it will be on the show in Berlin in, I believe it is September. So we, the question now is a little bit too early, but we will have the answer in the coming year for this.
Well, thanks so much, Patrick. And learned a thing. I need to hang around in a bus, which is more modern than sit in the bus. Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Hello again to you, Chris. From a bus manufacturer, we now go to a mobility provider. You as a company, Keolis, are operating a large and modern fleet of buses, varying in size. And we also heard Patrick talk about it. How has Keolis embraced environmentally friendly transportation options? Can you enlighten us?
So thank you, Frans. I sure can, because unlike Patrick, we have a legacy. So for us, it's a transition much more than innovation, although innovation comes into the picture as well. So maybe I can answer your question with a little anecdote, and I have to go back to the 13th of December 2020. And I remember this day very well for two reasons. First of all, it was a typical Dutch winter day. It was very dreary and dark and wet and cold. And I found myself in the tiny township of or town of Dedemsvaart. I think many people might not have heard of it even. It's close to Zwolle. And the reason why I was in Dedemsvaart is because on that day, Keolis launched what was at the time the biggest fleet of zero emission buses in Europe, 256 of them. And as this happens in the Netherlands, we launched these new concessions from one day to the other. So we went from a situation where we had only diesel vehicles on one day, and the next day we would have 256 electrical vehicles running in the provinces of Overijssel and Flevoland and Gelderland, to be complete. So now, if we look at zero emission, I think there's a lot of things that we could talk about. But what is really important to understand is that in our business model, we actually have two customers. So we have the passengers, of course, on the one side, but we also have the public transport authorities. And the public transport authorities, what we actually do for them is we actually help them achieve their goals. So, for instance, if a PTA would say our goal is to be like 100% zero emission by 2028, for instance, the province of Utrecht says this, well, we will help them to enable this. But at the same time, if we have a PTA like in Stockholm that will tell us, no, we want you to continue running on biogas for a while, that's also something we will do. Because we are in the business of enabling those PTAs to actually achieve their societal goals. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks so much. 256 buses. And now I'm very curious, how did the public, the other part of the customers, so not the PTA, respond to these buses?
Yeah, so the funny part is, although when we ask passengers in surveys if they care about green transportation and mobility options, they overwhelmingly say so. They really like to have green mobility options. But then once we introduce the electric buses, a lot of our passengers actually don't notice that there are now electric buses. They notice there are new buses, but when you get on the bus and you ask them, what kind of traction do you think this bus has? Is it electric? Is it diesel? Is it gas? A lot of people actually won't know. And I think that is actually the success of the zero emission transition story, that we have to make sure that passengers actually don't notice that they're transitioning. For them, it's business as usual, just a great quality bus they're traveling in. And for us, of course, in on the back, in our systems, in our approaches, in our methods, well, this has been a huge thing to achieve. And I think the most important thing we discovered as Keolis is that whereas buses in the past were very much a business where you would actually buy vehicles and then run vehicles, now we have to have a much stronger system approach. So with the charging infrastructure, the vehicles, but also the software that will run the charging and the vehicles themselves. So this is much more of a holistic systems approach. This is a key takeaway. The other key takeaway is reliability. So basically what we cannot do is tell our passengers, sorry guys, your bus is not running today because we have some issues with the zero emission traction chain. That is just not acceptable. So we have to make sure that our zero emission transition is reliable and that the buses, like I said, passengers won't notice a thing.
Thank you so much, Chris. Looking forward to traveling to Dedemsvaart in an electric bus with you. Okay, now coming to you, Lukas. Warm welcome. No electrification without charging, I have to say. And Heliox is leading the way with rapid charging technologies. So, Lukas, can you explain how Heliox charging solutions contribute to making the transition to electric transportation more sustainable? And what is the exact impact on efficiency and cost effectiveness? And also, we just heard key takeaway number 1 from Chris, also the reliability.
Yes, thank you very much, Hans. I must connect to Chris' point right away. As he mentioned, the whole system has gotten more complex. So when we come from a diesel bus now going electric, it's a lot more parties that are involved. So we don't only have the vehicle side, we also have the charging infrastructure side and also the grid connection, which is really important. And from our point of view, what we want to achieve is to create a seamless charging experience, because as you mentioned before, we, not all of us, but some of us who already may drive electric in their personal lives know that a charger should always work when we need them. So this is something that's really important. And when we connect this to the bus segment, one big major topic in that is interoperability. So in several projects that we have realized in the Benelux countries, we see customers who are running buses from different OEMs. So there might be one PTO, for example, AML in Amsterdam, that are using buses from different brands. And we want to make sure that the charging experience is always the same, no matter what vehicle is involved. And what also connects to that is, of course, the software side. So it's not only the hardware, not only the charger that needs to be installed, that needs to be running, but also the software behind it. So when we talk about also what you mentioned before, Franz, efficiency and how can we improve on that and make it more sustainable, things like having a backend load management, also monitoring your fleet. These are very important factors that we already have implemented in projects today, but that we also see coming in the future that will help those PTOs to really, make their own fleet and their operations more efficient.
Okay, thank you. And then I think one of the main concerns of the public, but also of governments, is the charging network. So having one charger is not enough. We need not only chargers in inner cities, but also on the long haul on our highways. In your opinion, can you give us some insights in this European charging network? How does it look like, especially the longer distances?
Yeah, so that's definitely something to look at, because on the one hand, when we look at the bus segment, we have those big depots, as I mentioned before, and this is something we have been working with for the past years already, for the last almost 10 years now. And what's coming up more and more is the long distance travel. So this is a different chapter or a different challenge, I would say, because we are a lot more dependent on the local grid capacity. And at the same time, the way that the vehicles charge is a different way, because Patrick mentioned before, in a depot, it's basically overnight charging. Along the way, we want to charge fast in a short time and then keep going. So for that, we need a lot more charging power. And for that, we also depend on a proper software load management that helps us, especially in the Benelux, where grid congestion can be a big issue. We have, of course, a lot of more wind power, for example, or solar power that we can use. But especially there, we need to make sure that when a lot of power is demanded at one location, that it's also available. And that could be via load management, but also including a battery system that's stored locally, for example.
Very interesting in combining all these technologies, I guess. That's the great thing that we have to achieve now. Thank you, Lukas. Menno, well, we now saw the buses. We saw the operator driving the buses around. We saw the energy coming into the buses, but where do these buses need to drive? And I think there your company comes in place to make this more efficiently. Could you provide us with an introduction to your company and how will the whole chain benefit from your company?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Frans. So we as a company are completely focused on the software side of optimizing how these bus systems operate. And specifically, what we do as the routing company is we developed a technology that allows buses to not drive on the same route all the time, but continuously in real time adapt the routes that they drive on based on where passengers are in that very moment. And so we allow passengers to book a ride through our app, indicate where they are and where they want to go. And we collect this data from all of the passengers in the system at that time. And then we send the vehicles there where they're actually needed. And the goal, of course, with that is to make sure that we can operate buses in areas where fixed routes don't necessarily make that much sense. So fixed routes, I think, make a lot of sense in areas where you have a large passenger volume that actually travels based on a very predictable pattern. But it doesn't make that much sense when you have people traveling from all over the place to all over the place, or where the demand is lower, such as in rural areas where you can not really capture the demand very well with a fixed route. And in those cases, it makes a lot of sense to make those buses drive on routes that are dynamic and adapt themselves to where passengers are. And this is fully real time. So we actually re-optimize all of the routes of the buses every 15 seconds. And so you can book a ride and you will immediately be assigned a vehicle, depending on availability, of course, to make sure that we get everybody to their destination in the fastest possible way.
That seems almost like a utopia to me. Not having to go to this bus stop, or at least know when the bus is coming. Can you elaborate a bit more on the benefits of your technology when you're looking at the passenger? Do you also have already some feedback when you installed your software?
Yeah. Well, so the first big benefit, of course, of the system as a whole to the passenger is that we can actually provide, with the same number of buses, transportation in a much larger area. And actually cover that area better. So if you live quite far from the nearest bus stop, now you actually wouldn't need to go to that bus stop, and the bus can actually drive all the way to your door, depending on how we set the system up, or to a stop around the corner much closer to you. And so that's the first really big benefit, that we can bring transportation closer to people and bring that convenience to where people actually need it. But I think the other really big advantage of this system that makes it a lot more appealing is that you simply in the app indicate where you are and where you want to go to, and then the system actually does all the thinking for you. So I think one of the challenges I always have when I use a bus or public transportation in an area where I don't travel every day is that I need to really think, how do I get from A to B? Where is the nearest bus stop? Where do I need to go? And what is the nearest stop to where I actually need to get out? And then exactly at what time does the bus depart from the stop? And then on the day itself, when I'm traveling, probably 10, 15 minutes before the bus will depart, I'm already checking the clock and making sure that I will be at the bus stop in time so that I don't miss it and maybe have to wait for half an hour for the next one and miss my appointment. And so I think that makes the system a lot more convenient for the passenger. You simply indicate where you are, where you want to go, and you get a ride assigned to you that is completely adapted to what you need. And so it's therefore, I think, a lot more convenient as well.
Okay, and now we were just talking about electric drivetrains together with Patrick. Do these new kind of technologies also change the way you tune your algorithm?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting thing that we already have looked at in the past is, so we have specialized in this technology that essentially determines at what time buses need to go where. And so when I'm talking about routing, maybe it makes sense to clarify that I'm actually talking about deciding which vehicle should pick up and drop off which passenger in which particular order, because those passengers don't necessarily go directly from their origin to their destination, but you pick up and drop off other passengers on the way as well. And so we're running these complex computations to optimize that part on a regular basis. But we can also, in that equation, take into account the charging state of a vehicle and make sure that we optimally decide which vehicles should charge at which particular moments in time, so that we always have the required number of vehicles available. You might, for example, not always have to charge your vehicle all the way up to 100% during rush hour, but charge it to a sufficient amount so that you can get through rush hour and then use more times that you expect less demand to charge your vehicles to 100%, for example. So that's something that we can take in this equation, in this optimization that we run every 15 seconds to make sure we can meet the passenger demand as efficiently as possible, but make sure our vehicles don't run out of battery as well.
Thank you so much. And it seems to me very difficult and a lot of mathematics behind it, Menno. Thanks for this answer. Now, dear panelists, go to a different topic, something completely different, I think the British would say. We go from electric drivetrains to robotization of vehicles and artificial intelligence, or in other words, the autonomous future bus. And for over 80 years, I know from literature and not from my own experience, we have been dreaming about self-driving cars, self-driving trucks, buses, tractors, and so on and so on. And they are happy to bring us fewer casualties, reduced congestion, environmental gains. Well, we're talking about environment all the time. Transport services becoming cheaper without a driver, and maybe even, Menno, as you already mentioned, higher service levels also in areas where autonomous buses replace the regular buses because they're cheaper. Well, for a long time, period of time, I think now these autonomous technologies state dreams of the near future, so to say, a moving horizon. But yet, while technology is proving, we have seen the rapid evolution of AI bringing autonomous vehicles, not in the future, but bringing them to us now. And after the deployment of automated trains, we have seen in the past trams, metros, we see the emergence of large fleets of shuttles, autonomous shuttles, buses, etc., etc. And even the European Commission helped us in bringing legislation to Parliament to allow us to drive around with highly automated vehicles on public roads now. And of course, there are a lot of challenges also ahead. The fear of unsafety with local governments and national governments, the misuse of transport modes that are autonomous. And for those who are familiar also with the robotized taxis in the US, I can really say to you, people tend to do some amazing things, and let's stick with the word amazing things in a vehicle without a driver. And of course, there is the issue of social safety when we don't have a driver on board. Now, Chris, starting with you, and hopefully you share my dream of 80 years of autonomous vehicles, and you still dream of it as I do. As one of the leaders in autonomous vehicles, your company, Keolis, has conducted a lot of tests already with autonomous shuttles, driving over, I have to look here, 94,000 kilometers already autonomously, carrying around more than 190,000 passengers. So these successful trials, amongst others in Belgium, show us the way towards real autonomous travel. Can you share with us some key insights? What did you learn with respect to the technology, but also with respect to how passengers liked the idea of driverless buses?
Okay, so Frans, I share your hope and vision for the future, that these autonomous systems will one day be part of the mobility ecosystem, and this is because they hold tremendous promise. But let's go back to the past, and this time we'll go to Lyon in 2016. It was another trip, and the weather was great over there as compared to Dedemsvaart. It's very hard to believe, but 2016 was the first trial of autonomous vehicles in the world. And it was done in Lyon, in a lovely area which is called Les Confluences. I don't know if you know it. It's a little bit the docklands of Lyon. And by chance, I was traveling in France that year, so I thought I'm just going to stop in Lyon and have a look at this new system. And I arrived, and a big disappointment because it was not running because there was a technical issue. I think a lot of us will recognize this. But in fact, what it made clear to us right from the start was that this was going to be a journey. And remember, this was the time when the press was declaring that the next day, the next week, everything was going to be autonomous. The world was going to change overnight. But we didn't see it that way. We thought of it as a journey. We knew it would be a difficult journey because safety is key, and ensuring safety would and still remains a key issue for this technology. And we also knew we needed partners. So the first thing we did is we partnered up with some leading entities in the business. And after that, we also understood that we needed to test some stuff. And I won't go back to 2017 because that's a little bit too far away, but let's go back to the past 2 years. One of the things we did is we partnered up with Ericsson in Sweden because we saw that actually the 5G connectivity and also the functionality that we would get with the 5G would be absolutely crucial to developing autonomous mobility. That's one element. The other one is that we very rapidly understood that we should be able to test all the different concepts out there. So there's a lot of providers, a lot of potential providers, and we wanted to actually see for ourselves. And there it becomes a really nice story because we were able to obtain an aerial outside of Paris in Châteauroux. It's an 80-hectare aerial, and it's quite unique in the world because it's a test site that is private property. So we are free to test our vehicles there. But it's also a living lab because this is also the site of the French Olympic shooting team. So basically, we get to use them as guinea pigs. We get to test the autonomous mobility with them, then using our vehicles to travel to their test sites. And it's been a really amazing story thus far. We've mapped out more than 5 kilometers of different pre-planned routing on that site. And we continue to test, the solutions of the future there. That having been said, it is a journey. We're not there yet. We're making great strides. But this is something which will take time before it really does revolutionize travel.
Okay, and when you look at your passengers, they were part of the shooting team, so I think they're used to getting into dangerous or, well, somewhat dangerous situations. So they probably liked it, but can you share with us some experience from regular passengers, not knowing which AI is behind your vehicles?
Yes, maybe it's good to state in this case that automatic metros have been around for a long time. I think Lille was one of the pioneering places. So this whole issue of autonomous transport is not entirely new. It's new on the roads, but it's not new on metro tracks. And what we saw happen is basically what happened with the first elevator when it was introduced, or the first steam train when it was introduced. People had doubts. There were even some people that were panicking about all the nefarious effects this could have. In effect, we saw that people adopted it quite rapidly. Some studies were done on this also, and we see that actually people accept this technology, so that is fine. What we do see, and this is a really important matter, is that not everybody has embraced smartphones and all the possibilities of the smartphone. So we have to make sure that these autonomous systems of the future can be accessed not only by digital means, by smartphone, but also through other channels, because this is a very important matter of inclusivity. And also for people with disabilities, of course, we have to make sure that they're able to use these systems.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Very important accessibility for all, not only the young people, but also the elderly, probably not being that familiar with smartphones. Thanks so much. Patrick, coming back to you. As I already stated in the introduction, and also Chris just did, driverless vehicles have the potential to really change the way we look at traveling. And you have this beautiful bus behind you, very red. But could you imagine that this bus is driving around without a driver somewhere, and how would this shape the way we travel, and maybe even in the end change the way we think of our cities?
Yes, I think we are really at the beginning of a big transformation of the public transport world. We see that we are now having a lack of drivers at the moment. Everywhere there's a need of drivers, and then you have two things. You have drivers, and you have people who have who hold on to the steering wheel, and especially that last part is rising at the moment. If you see the damage of the insurance company reports, the damage in depots is more than the damage on the road. So I think some kind of automation will take place in the industry. We are at this moment, together with the city of München and the University of Karlsruhe, busy with platooning. So in platooning, you have a vehicle with a driver, but the second vehicle is following without a driver. And there's a certain distance in between, and this platooning can, for instance, be connected to each other. So we have a 12 meter with a 12 meter behind it, and if needed, another 12 meter. You could also say, okay, we are going to skip the 18 meter vehicles or the 24 meter vehicles. We are all go back to a 12 or 10 meter vehicle, and then platoon the vehicles after each other on the rush hour moments. So we are really looking into that. We are really testing it, but we also need a lot of guidance from the European Union. I mean, somebody needs to program in the platooning system, in the autonomous system, the computers. The computer needs to make a decision in case of an accident, if you brake or if you steer. And we now have this new GSR coming up from next year, summer, General Safety Regulations, where some elements as a warning system are obliged to have in your vehicle before registration, but these are still warnings. So it's an acoustic or optical warning of the system for the driver, but it is not active. So it will not brake or it will not steer, because those parameters, those settings need to be programmed by somebody in the computer, and this computer needs to make a decision between, if I have an accident, go left or go right. And these are really things we need to fine tune, but at the end, will for sure be happening. I think that autonomous driving in depot, that is something which is really low hanging fruit, something which will go really happening in the next 2 years. Very basically, driver comes from his route, stops in a kind of depot area, gets out, push the button, and the vehicle itself goes over the depot, over the cleaning area to his charger, and stays there and will be charged. And then when the driver comes for his new service, he logs on with his card, the vehicle somewhere wake up, go all the way from his charging point to the entrance, or this time the exit of the depot. The driver gets in, take over the vehicle and moves. And I think this will be the first step, low-hanging fruit for the next 2 years, which will be really happening.
Well, thank you, Patrick. A very, very nice view on autonomy that is already happening inside the depots within 2 years, you say, but also on the streets. Also, Chris already stated, well, it will happen. Also, to you, the audience, when you have questions with respect to the trustworthiness of the AI, or whether you would like to ask some questions with respect to this, please feel free to put your question in the chat. One other question, Patrick. We mentioned the rural areas, the driver shortages, but also the cost price of running a big bus or a smaller bus in these rural areas. Do you think this automation will, in the end, if trustworthy, change also the way we look at public transport in the rural areas?
So what exactly is then the question? I mean,
getting the driver out of the bus, maybe making it more cheap, or overcoming the driver shortage. Will this help us in also getting the bus again back to the rural areas?
Yeah, but the rural, what you see now, especially what Chris mentioned in the Keolis fleet of the 259 vehicles, that was basically a rural area. And there were two big cities like Zwolle and Apeldoorn, which were city operations. But the rest of this whole area was rural area. So it was intercity lines where you have low entries, long distance. So I think this autonomous will be more connected in the city, platooning also more in the city. The rural areas, I think the vehicles will become shorter, because you see that vehicles, we don't need 12 meter or 80 meter in rural areas. But if you have platooning, then you can do with an 8 or a 10 meter vehicle, you can do the rural areas, because they are never packed with 50 people. But you have the size of the vehicle, so you also have the weight and the consumption of that vehicle. So if you make your vehicle shorter, make it lighter, perhaps there will be in the European Union law for different driving license, like we already saw in the past in Germany, that you can have a driving license up to 3.5 ton, up to 5 ton, and over 5 ton. So if we are having smaller vehicles in those rural areas, then you can also have a better frequent for enclosing that area, which is really important to bring people to the city.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. Interesting to see the progress already being made in Apeldoorn with respect to this, and really fancy the idea of platooning. Let's talk on this a bit more later on, maybe. Menno.
Yes.
Talking about your AI and your algorithms. Interesting, and I have to say that sometimes the AI is a bit scaring me. I'm a big fan of all these futuristic movies where AI is taking over. What is your view on AI? Hopefully you can help me a bit with this, make me less scared. And AI in the role in the field of traveling, will it change the traveling?
So I think it will change several aspects of traveling, but I think, for example, what we do in our algorithm, a lot of it is actually based on first principles. So when we make decisions on which vehicles to send where, we actually use basically characteristics of this problem, like how long are people willing to wait for a vehicle? How long are people willing to be in a vehicle while it's picking up and dropping off other passengers? And we actually use basically pure mathematics. Well, artificial intelligence obviously is also that, but which we fully define and understand to make those decisions. And I think in this case, we don't actually need machine learning to do that, but we also do leverage on machine learning for other parts of this problem, which are a little less difficult to define and will rely more on learning. So to give you an example, when we make decisions on where to send vehicles, one aspect that's very important is how long does it actually take to get from A to B in a particular area. We need predictions on how long that will take to make accurate decisions on where to send our vehicles, because it's basically based on that. We compare different routes and we determine how long does it take in each route to get the passengers to their destinations, and that obviously relies a lot on those travel times. And so in this case, for example, we actually have vehicles driving around in our operating areas that are essentially measuring travel times all the time. And so we can rely on machine learning to over time learn how long does it take on an average Monday morning at 9 a.m. to get from this specific location in our operating area to this specific location. And I think it's very useful for that. Another example is we actually use it to predict demand in the future. So where, for example, in an hour do we expect passengers to book rides? And we can actually leverage on this data and this information to proactively position our vehicles close to those areas so that they will already be close to those pickups, which basically means that the vehicle could already be at your location before you even booked your ride. And I think these types of things, this is also, of course, outside of the autonomous realm because it really plays a very important role in that as well. But I think we will see a lot of this type of learning to make public transportation more efficient and to see these patterns and to adapt how we use our physical resources, our vehicles, and make sure that we use them as efficiently as possible and they spend as little time as possible empty and have as many passengers on board that can leverage on them when they need them.
Okay, thank you so much. That helps me a lot, Menno. Before I go to you, Lukas, we have a question from the audience, and I'm looking specifically to Chris and also to Patrick. The question is, do you in the Netherlands or in the Benelux force smaller vehicles, probably in rural areas? Will that be a law not driving around again with 18 meters of buses? Do you see some laws there existing or coming up?
Well, at this moment, no. At this moment, not. At this moment, as an OEM, we follow the operator, and they may basically follow the tender book. So it needs influence from the PTA. But what I was trying to say is that you see, for instance, in London, the vehicles are 10.4 meters, because it's in London downtown. It's more crowded, so they don't want to drive around with a 12 meter or 80 meter vehicle. But what they do is they put a 10.4 and platoon another 10.4 behind it. See, in Stadwerken München, they have this technique of a trailer. So you have one 12-meter vehicle, and behind it you have a 10-meter trailer. In this trailer, there's no driver. Yeah. So this is a law thing, which is now they have an exemption for this because it is actually European-wide forbidden to put passengers in a trailer. But these are things we are investigating, and we should explore and think out of the box. But it should come from top down. So it should come from PTAs to PTOs to the OEM.
Okay, Chris, do you have something to add to this?
Yes, I'm actually very happy with this question because we do think it's very important to learn from the past and not to repeat the mistakes from the past. So if you look at the 50s and 60s of the last century, when the private car usage was given free rein, I think that's a story we should not repeat with autonomous vehicles. So very clearly, we need governance. And we also need to understand that today at the heart of our policies are the Sustainable Development Goals, as also pronounced by the United Nations. And what is really, really important at this point in the Benelux, I think, is the livability of our cities and communities. So for sure, we should figure out how public transport, how mass rapid transit, and also how autonomous shuttles or larger vehicles fit into this. And this is really a matter of governance. So we will really be looking to the provincial authorities and also the national governments to create a framework for this, to make sure that we can actually have a good balance between autonomous mobility and the livability of our communities and cities.
Thank you so much, Chris. And hopefully, dear audience, this answers the question. Lukas, coming to you, we were discussing all the technologies that need to be provided in charging. It's not only the hardware, it's also the software. And I can imagine that there's a lot of AI involved also in charging and planning of charging. Can you enlighten us?
Yes, for sure, Frans. Thank you very much. So in general, as you said, we collect a lot of data every day. So if we look at the vehicles, it's super exciting to see how they transform into more autonomous, or the transformation is going on towards more autonomous vehicles. But if we look at, for example, one single depot, if I take the example of a big depot at the Amsterdam airport, where we're running or charging more than 100 buses, all the buses together in one day do 30,000 kilometers in just one day. So this is a lot, and this is a lot of data that we collect if we look at all over Europe, the bigger picture. So taking all these data, we can learn a lot from it, and this can also help us to make the charging progress more efficient. So if we look at the depot, Patrick mentioned it before, in the future when there's vehicles driving around autonomously, of course, the charging also needs to support this process. So we need reliable chargers and also connectors. In most cases, it's charging via the contact hood, because then you don't need a person to physically attach the cable or the charger to the vehicle. So that's an interesting technology that's already been used today. And in the case of Amsterdam, this is already running for the last 5 years. So this is something that's happening already, and that's only increasing. So we're collecting more and more data and connect it to our software to actually make use of it and use it also for predictability, because when it comes to having a reliable charger, we want the uptime to be as high as possible. And the more data we collect at an early stage, the better we can already predict what's happening in the coming days. And yeah, one more thing I would like to add in this case is that the more charging infrastructure we install, the more critical we become in the entire environment. So it is really important to have a reliably running system, because without functioning buses, but also without functioning charging infrastructure, this whole transition wouldn't be possible.
Okay, thank you so much, Lukas. Well, we have a question for you again, Chris, from the audience, talking about autonomous driving. What do you think? Would it be especially interesting, as we already discussed, in areas outside of the cities, or especially also inner cities? What is your feeling?
So we feel it will work in both, but I think we have to start from actually looking at how mobility looks like now, and actually being honest to ourselves. Our mobility systems nowadays are in many cases not efficient. So it's not an efficient use of scarce resources if you're traveling by yourself in your private car. And so what we see in the theoretical models for the future is that if you combine mass rapid transit, so then we're talking about urban trains, metros, trams, bus rapid transit, of course, very important mode also. If we use that to really efficiently move large numbers of people on the longer or the mid-range distances, then we will be able to use the autonomous shuttles for really the first last mile solution. And this holds incredible promise, because with this we could actually achieve mobility systems that are incredibly efficient, but also incredibly easy to use, and with huge advantages of passengers as well. We could look at a future where you can basically travel 24/7 using one of those first last mile solutions. It can be more than a mile, of course, going to a mass rapid transit stop and then continuing your journey with others. This holds incredible promise. Of course, the way we develop the solutions will be different in the cities than in more rural areas, but I would say it will play a major role in both.
Okay, thank you so much. And you are mentioning a lot of options, going to bus rapid transit, by other modes of transport. Menno, coming to you, we see inner cities, many different options of traveling. Can we also, maybe by your software, bring all these options to rural areas or not?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question that we get a lot specifically about this on-demand system. And what we actually see is that the concentration of where our system is used most is in dense areas, urban areas, as well as rural areas. The reason is it works well wherever demand is chaotic, so where you cannot really capture people traveling from 1A to 1B efficiently. That can also be in a city center where people are traveling from all over the place to all over the place. And in rural areas, this is also often the case. There is definitely a difference between how we operate the system in a rural area versus an urban area. Specifically, the question we get a lot is, can you still get sharing in rural area because people live farther apart? Actually, what we can adjust in our system is how long is it acceptable for a passenger to wait to get on a bus? How long in advance do people need to book? And we see that, for example, in cities, people expect to get picked up essentially within minutes generally. Whereas in the more rural areas where we operate, there's a higher acceptance to wait maybe a little bit longer. It is fine to wait for 15 minutes or 20 minutes for the bus to come when you book it. And you don't need to wait for that time at a bus station, but instead it will actually notify you this is when we will come and pick you up beforehand. And so this is how we make it work on either ends of the spectrum, and we can actually provide a very valuable service in more rural areas as well. There are, of course, challenges that the density is lower, but by adapting these parameters, you can still efficiently make use of your vehicles and get multiple passengers to use the vehicle simultaneously. And also, of course, because you're not using this fixed route, the vehicle is not just driving when there is no need for demand in a particular area. If you miss the bus by 5 minutes because you decided too late that you want to go, you now, for example, don't need to wait for half an hour or an hour for the bus to come there again, but you book it when you need it. And so you can actually use those viewer vehicles better in the larger areas.
Okay, thank you so much, Menno, and also thanks to the audience for this interesting question. Well, we were talking about two kinds of customers. On one hand, we have the public transport operators and authorities, and on the other hand, we have the customer in the bus. And we have mentioned the customer in the bus already sometimes. I recently ran into a quote on LinkedIn, and I think it came from an advertisement from some UK train company, but nevertheless, I found it very interesting. On the picture, we saw Sir Paul McCartney reading a book in probably an empty train, traveling from somewhere to, I think, Liverpool, I guess. And the quote made behind the picture was, "A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation." Very, very nice quote, of course. But I have to come clean with you, and I wouldn't especially call myself rich, but since the COVID period forcing me into my private car, I have become addicted to my private space. And not only me, especially in the Netherlands, we have seen public transport and specifically bus travel having difficulties in getting back there, what I call the fair share of travelers. And the Netherlands Institute for Transport Policy Analysis, KIM, just recently published their analysis of public transport passenger numbers. And they compared, and this was quite painful, the numbers of bus travelers in 2019 to 2022. And we see a decrease of 24% in distance traveled by bus. And for 2028, the Institute forecasts no growth in bus travel. Yet, as partners here and you panelists, we all believe in the concept of fresh bus travel. So hopefully we can defeat these researchers. So coming to you, Menno, the bus and the coach, unfortunately, or probably have a rather tarnished and old-fashioned image. How can we, in your opinion, achieve a higher attractiveness for the bus, not only for younger people, but also for older people? And how can we compete with the car?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it's a shame to hear those numbers, that the number of people that are using a bus is decreasing. I also think it is a challenge when, for example, we take away bus routes and we decrease the spending on bus systems, and people start using other modes. It's very difficult to get them back. And so this is something that we really need to think about. But on the other side, I really believe that the only way to get a large number of people to use buses, larger than what we have right now, is to make it essentially the most obvious decision to use. So if people are looking at how do I get from A to B, it needs to be a combination of the most convenient, cost-effective, and fastest way to get from A to B. I think there are many areas where a lot of people wouldn't even think about using their car, but always, or not always, of course, but in a lot of cases would decide to use public transportation because it's the most obvious. Think about traveling within a city center or a heavily congested area where public transportation is just so much faster. So I think that is a very important part of getting people to use public transportation. But I think the other part is also to think about how can we make it more attractive. And to make it more attractive, in many cases, it just needs to be more convenient. It needs to be easy to use. It needs to be affordable. And I think that's what we're working on for many different aspects, by making the buses more appealing, by making them more modern. But also from our side, what we're trying to do is what I already indicated at the start: make bus transportation more personalized, make it more easy and thought-free, essentially, to use it, to make sure that the vehicles go to you. They are there when you need them. You don't really need to think about it. And at that point, it becomes easier. Because I think a lot of people would choose to not drive a car if there is an other alternative where somebody is driving them to get from A to B. It has a lot of benefits. You can do something else. You don't have to watch the road and spend a lot of valuable time basically doing nothing but watching the road. There's a lot of benefits to it. And so that's really, I think, the key of what we need to think about. How can we make this a much more attractive alternative that is the most obvious choice for a lot of people to use?
Okay, thank you, Menno. And looking at this future bus, I come to you, Patrick. We see many concerns with the public of batteries all of a sudden catching fire, maybe hydrogen bombs on buses, etc., etc. How do you feel about these fears of the audience?
Yeah, it happens. A diesel vehicle got on fire as well, but the diesel vehicle will not reach the newspapers anymore, because everywhere there are diesel vehicles. And when there's an electric vehicle hits fire, then it is broadcasted in the media, and then it is broadcasted on the first page of the newspaper. I think it's just a transition we need to go through. I remember in the Netherlands, everybody was at a certain moment driving on the LPG, so liquid petrol gas, but we could not enter German car parks because they were afraid of LPG in car parks, especially in basements. So I think this is a transition we need to go through. Remember that the first cars in the world, somebody with a red flag need to walk in front of it because it was dangerous. Yeah, so it's a transition we need to go through. I think batteries, BMSs, fire extinguishers are really getting better and better. We have all the regulations. Think about R118, which is a fire prediction regulation on buses, on stuff, on floors, on seats. So I think the industry is really aware of it and really cautious that new technology is causing new fears or new doubts. But without new technology, we will all still walking around and also the moment that we leave in the past, we leave the stone area, it's not because we had a lack of stones. We still have stones, but the technology continues, so we also continue.
Thanks, Patrick. And we're not afraid of stones anymore. So I think the traveler and the passenger should be reassured now. Thanks so much, Chris. Coming to you. We are talking about this traveler and the future of bus travel. How do you, as a company, Keolis, adapt to the changing demands of travel? Maybe also the changing demands after the COVID pandemic. Can you enlighten us a bit?
Yes, I can tell you a few things. Somewhere after the change of the century, at Keolis, we became aware that things were happening in mobility. Things that we didn't always understand. So we said we really have to do a deep dive, really understand what's happening in mobility, and also really understand the trends in society that drive mobility. So it took a few years, but then we came up with a method which we call chaoscopy, which is like a 360-degree approach to mobility and patterns in society. And this has been a treasure trove ever since. So I'll say something about Corona at the end. But the reality is actually that much more exciting stuff is happening. So, for instance, if you look at the morning and the evening peak, so if you look back at the 80s, what would people do? They would travel to work, to school in the morning with the bus or the car, and then travel home, back home in the afternoon. So this has completely changed. So our mobility patterns today are completely different. We go to school, we work part-time, we have different jobs, we go see friends, we go to the gym, whatever. And what we see now in our big networks is that not only the peaks are less important, but we actually see more people traveling outside of the morning and the afternoon peak than inside those peaks. And only half of the people that travel in the morning peak will actually travel in the evening peak and the other way around. So this is really a big challenge because of course, originally we tended to focus a lot of our energy and resources on providing enough capacity in the morning and afternoon peak. So this has to change. So now we have a much stronger focus to make sure that our PT systems are attractive from the beginning of the day until late at night. And I think a perfect example of this we can actually find in the Netherlands, in Almere, where there's a really great bus rapid transit system where you can travel from 4 in the morning until almost 2 o'clock at night. So we're talking about almost 24/7 coverage. A bus running every 5 minutes, metro style. The ease of use that some of you have talked about, I think Menno as well. So this is really important. I could talk about this for hours, so interrupt me if you want, but I'll just give one other example, which is really important.
Please do.
When we took a deep dive into actually the notion of hidden disabilities, I'm not sure if everybody knows this concept, but what we actually see is that a lot of people, when they use public transport, they run into barriers. And sometimes this is very visible, of course, when somebody is in a wheelchair. It's very clear and very visible what barriers they can run into. And we need to take away those barriers and make it possible for them to travel. But very often, barriers can be invisible. I'll just give you a few examples. For instance, a person that is on the autistic scale can get really upset, for instance, if the timetable is not being run in the usual or in the regular way. If you are a very shy person, maybe you really have inhibitions to ask a driver or another passenger to help you out. Even if you're new in an area, you can really face barriers. And what we saw is, depending on how you look at this phenomenon, more than 50% of our passengers and potential passengers actually run into substantial barriers. And this is one of the main challenges of the coming years, that we should really work towards taking away those barriers, because only then we can achieve the equality of usage. So making sure that everybody, regardless of your disabilities, hidden disabilities or otherwise, can actually be mobile. Because Frans, you said it at the start, mobility is really the key to everything. So we have to make sure that everyone is part of this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. And I certainly agree with you, mobility for all. Well, looking at the number of buses that come to market, Patrick, we see, at least in the passenger car field, that a lot of OEMs from Asian companies are coming towards us. Probably you will see the same thing also in the bus industry. Do you think this will change the experience for the traveler as a whole? Does it bring more competition and new concepts? Or is it just plain business as usual? You're still muted.
Okay, I don't think that the passenger will really feel the difference. We as an OEM, we feel the difference. We already saw this on the last Bus World, where you see a lot of new OEMs, especially from Asia, trying to enter the market. Yeah, we saw India, we saw Chinese. I think Korea will also be there next time. So you see a lot of newcomers, and this will change the world for us as let's say European OEMs. But if the passenger will really feel the difference, if the vehicle is produced by a Chinese company or a German company, I don't think that the passenger itself will, because normally inside the bus there's resto components like the air conditioning, the door system, or the seat. So I don't think the passenger will feel it, but OEM they will feel it. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much, Patrick, and also thanks to the audience again for this question. Lukas, coming to you. Many cities and regions in our area are setting ambitious targets to electrify their public transport systems. How does your company, adapt to this? And maybe also, could you say a bit more than you already did on the topic of grid congestion and maybe also safety?
Yes, for sure. So what we see, the demands are changing, that's true. It also varies per region. So if you look at the Benelux region, there's currently, depending on the city, also different requirements than in the German market, for example. But what we see is also, when we're talking about grid congestion, is that this is a big challenge wherever there's a lot of traffic going on, where there's a dense city and lots of vehicles, especially electrified vehicles that need to charge. So we have implemented in several projects solutions that I mentioned before, such as load management, but also using the infrastructure as a virtual power plant, for example, so that we can work against that grid congestion. And we have realized this in several projects. One of them being, for example, the Transdev depot in Eindhoven, where we have several chargers installed, and we use not the full power depending on the time of the day. So there is a difference in the used power during the daytime and the nighttime, which can already help the grid congestion in that area. We have another project in Den Bosch, also in the Netherlands, for example, where we're connecting the charging infrastructure with locally installed solar panels, also with charging of cars, having battery storage involved in the system. So this really helps us to separate the issues on several positions. So it's not only the charger that is demanding power, but it's also the vehicle that can help. So in the long term, we're also looking at bidirectional charging, where we can take the energy back from the vehicle battery and get it back into the system to stabilize the grid overall.
Thanks, Lukas. And Chris, this must sound familiar to you as well. Can you enlighten us from the Keolis perspective on grid congestion?
Yeah, so I was actually saving this one for my last remarks, but I'll talk about it now. So this is a huge issue at this point. So if you look at all the issues we have to deal with, I think it's almost number one, because of course we have huge challenges in doing this zero emission transition in the Netherlands. It should be done by 2030. But like I mentioned, there are some authorities that want it done even earlier, by 2028. So this grid congestion is really something we have to work with. At the same time, I think there should be more flexibility into the system as well. Because if you look at the actual congestion issues now on the grid, you will see that there are very much an element of early mornings when we all wake up. We all need electricity during the day when a lot of companies are working. And of course, again, in the evening when we have dinner. But at night, not so much. And of course, we as a sector would mostly be using the night slot. So I think we have to look at really creative solutions where we work together with other partners, where we look at the capacity that is available and then just be smart about it. We will do part of our charging in the night. We will do it in the weekends. Other companies will take the day slots. So that is something definitely we have to do. But of course, we also look at the governments, because the ambitions for the zero emission transition are really high. I think governments would also have to look very closely at how to provide then the capacity to make this happen. And of course, the grid is something that needs to be developed very quickly. It is happening. It's a staggering number, but I was told by these providers that actually 18,000 people are working today as we speak on enlarging the grid in the Netherlands. So it's a huge effort, but we really have to continue on that path.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I think, Patrick, you in the beginning were already talking about modularization, smaller batteries, less charging probably. Can you again enlighten us a bit on that?
Yeah, so what we have established with this lightweight composite body is that we also have a lighter or a smaller battery. And then the customer can choose, say, okay, if my vehicle is about, let's say, 3 or 4 tons lighter, but I still want to have an 18-ton gross vehicle weight, then you can add this difference in kilos. You can add it with either with passengers or you can add it with batteries. So what we do is we can add a string. We call the string is 4 battery packs to the battery. So for 250, you go to roughly 380, you go to over 500, and then you make the decision. Okay, am I staying into the city? If I'm staying in the city, I don't need 500 kilowatt of batteries, because then I have everywhere there's electricity. So you can either buy a pump to down solution. You can even have a recharge during the day. But if you go to rural areas, yeah, then I am not so convenient with electricity on the road. Yeah, therefore you will take a 500 kilowatt battery. And for the passengers, if I'm in the city and I need to stay, it's okay. I'm about 5 to 7 minutes in the bus. But if I go to rural areas, in between, I want to sit down. Preferably, I want to sit down in facing the drive direction. Yeah, so the whole vehicle is then built up in a different way. Let's think about low entry. The low entry is made so that everybody can look forward. And nobody wants to stay in a low entry vehicle, because a low entry vehicle will take you at least 20-30 minutes before you are at your destination. So there you can play with this modular system of battery, vehicle type, and capacity.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Well, dear panelists, I want to close down this session, but not before I will ask you to give your final vision for 2030, which is only around 6 years away from now, and maybe a bit longer then. Can I start with you, Lukas? What is your vision for fresh travel, bus travel, for the near future and a bit farther?
Yes, Frans, thank you very much. So 2030, as you said, is not very far away. We see lots of new projects upcoming, though. So the process or the progress is just increasing now. There's more and more projects in cities all over Europe, also in the Benelux especially. We also see it in our DACH region, in the German-speaking market, in the Nordics, in the UK, you name them. So I think it's really cool to see that this transition is happening. And in the next few years, I think it will be more important also to look at more efficient ecosystems where the charging infrastructure is part of it. So naming one example, we had one depot installed in the UK, in Glasgow, where we're not only using the charging infrastructure for buses, but also for other public vehicles such as taxis or delivery vehicles. So this could also be a solution in the next coming years for cities to integrate other parts who participate in this EV area, not only the buses or the trucks that are also growing. And I think this is our vision also for the next few years until 2030, to enable our customers to also involve other parties when it comes to charging infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Lukas. Well, Chris, you already gave your final words on the previous question, but can you add something about your vision for 2030 and even farther away?
Yes, I do have a few other thoughts left. Maybe the first thing to say is that actually really exciting things are happening today as we speak. I don't want to make any publicity, but look at Germany with the Deutschland ticket, flat fare for public transport usage. I would call it the Netflix of public transport, potentially a huge disruptor. We have OVP in the Netherlands, also an amazing development. You can now travel with public transport anywhere in the Netherlands using your debit or credit card or wearable. You just tap in with your debit card, you tap out, and then your account will be charged overnight. I think we all remember times when getting a ticket, well, figuring out which ticket you needed, then buying the ticket were a huge hassle. Well, all of this is going to be in the past. So we see a lot of very exciting stuff happen. And because all of these things are happening, we at Keolis are really convinced that in 2030 and beyond, we're going to be able to find a balance between quality of life on the one side and mobility on the other side. And mobility will more and more contribute to this quality of life. And in this, some key words, shared mobility will have the future, multimodality will have the future. And if I had to bet, I think by 2035, we will all be walking a lot more than today. We'll be even cycling a lot more than today, and we'll be traveling with shared mobility options a lot more than today as well. Be it bus rapid transit for the classical bus, be it dynamic on-demand solutions or autonomous shuttles. But in our view, that is what the future holds.
Thank you so much, Chris. A very nice future, so to say. Patrick, do you have some interesting positions to share with us on the future?
Oh yes, of course. These technologies, what we shared, are things happening. Climate papers, which are focusing on the 2030 carbon-free, 2035 carbon-free, are really something we follow, and we are thinking is a good step to go ahead. And yeah, this demand what will come to the OEMs. For sure, we cannot do it all alone. So I think there will be space for foreigner OEMs to enter the market as well, because it will be just too much, too big in too short time.
Thanks, Patrick. And last but not least, going to the youngest company, I guess, here in our panel. Menno, how will your company change the way we travel in 2030 and further?
Yeah, so I think the key really here is we have to and we will achieve a lot more with fewer resources. We will need fewer vehicles to transport more passengers more efficiently. Undoubtedly, those vehicles will become electric on the short term and hopefully also autonomous, but I don't think that will happen, unfortunately, in 6 years, but let's see. But we will need to be able to provide more compelling public transportation that will get people out of their private vehicles, and we will make people be able to travel to where they need to go faster and have to spend fewer time in those vehicles. And that is really our goal with our technology, and I'm very optimistic that that's something that together we will be able to accomplish, to make public transportation more efficient, more compelling, and therefore also more efficient and sustainable.
Thank you, Menno. And I still believe that technology is the key here also in optimizing it.
Okay, hello again. Jana and I want to thank you all for your participation. Dank jullie wel, merci. Special thanks also to our moderator and our speakers for the very interesting discussion. I enjoyed it very much. We hope to see you all again soon at the BUS2BUS Trade Fair in Berlin, either as exhibitor or visitor. The fair will take place from 24 to 25 April in 2024, and it is still possible to register as an exhibitor. Please reach out to me or Jana if you want more information about BUS2BUS. And then, last but not least, stay tuned for a brief video with some images from the last edition of BUS2BUS. It won't take long. Thanks again, and see you soon.